Neji Hyuga had all the potential in the world, but ended up becoming more useless than Sakura. Let's not beat around the bush. Neji Hyuga is one of the biggest wasted characters in all of Naruto, and yes, I'm including the entire roster of forgotten support characters, the random filler villains, and the side clans we never heard from again. Neji sits on a different tier of wasted potential because unlike most of them, he actually mattered. He had a real ideology, real conflict, real trauma, and a real arc that directly tied into Naruto's overarching themes, and somehow he ends up dying to a glorified toothpick in the middle of a war. A death that didn't add anything to the story except a forced emotional beat shoved in like a jump scare nobody asked for. Today we're going deep into why his death was dumb and how his entire character tragedy was abandoned and why nothing about his ending felt earned. Neji wasn't designed to be a background character. He had one of the strongest introductions in part 1. Forget the genius prodigy label, because Naruto had like 10 of those. What made Neji different was that his worldview wasn't petty or childish. It was grounded in years of emotional manipulation, clan oppression, and a rigid social system that literally branded him as inferior at birth. When Neji talks about fate, it's not an edgy phrase, it's his entire lived reality. The Hyuga clan split him from his father. They forced him into servitude. They decided everything for him before he even had the chance to decide for himself. So when Neji stood in the arena against Naruto and told him destiny is unchangeable, it wasn't a villain monologue, it was a kid speaking from trauma. That's what made Naruto vs Neji one of the more interesting fights in the original series. It wasn't just about fists, it was ideology. It was someone who believed that he had no future facing someone who believed the future is something you can carve out with your own 2 hands. And Neji losing that fight was monumental. It cracked his worldview. It forced him to reflect on the truth behind his father's death. It sparked growth. You actually saw him become softer, more open, more hopeful. He started believing in his own agency. You'd think a transformation like that sets the stage for a deep, long-term storyline, right? Shippuden said nah. Shippuden benched Neji hard. The moment Shippuden began, it was clear who Kishimoto wanted to focus on: Sasuke and the Uchiha plotline. Everything else became background noise. Neji, who had the perfect setup for a major part 2 arc, got neglected to cameo duty. Look at his role in each arc. Kazekage rescue arc. He's present, barely talks, doesn't influence anything. Tenchi bridge arc. Akatsuki suppression arc. Sasuke retrieval mission Shippuden. Okay, how about the war arc? The writing treated him like a side NPC once the Uchiha drama kicked into high gear, and this hurts even more because Neji is one of the very few characters whose story actually intersected with the politics and traditions of Konoha in a meaningful way. You had a clan built on an oppressive caste system, inherited trauma, a rigid tradition, a literal curse seal that controls the bodies of the branch members, and you had Neji, someone smart enough, skilled enough, and personally motivated enough to reform it. But instead of giving him the spotlight, the narrative just quietly boxed the Hyuga clan into irrelevance. The Uchiha took over the story, and the Hyuga, who arguably had just as potential for world building, were written out of major importance. If Neji had even half the narrative focus Shikamaru or Sasuke had, part 2 could have fleshed out Konoha's internal systems, traditions, and clan dynamics. Instead, he was treated like a leftover from part 1. The war arc made Neji into a prop. The 4th Great Ninja War was already bloated with too many characters and not enough meaningful fights, but even then, Neji's role was embarrassingly small. He had the Byakugan, one of the best battlefield abilities you could ask for, and the story barely used him for strategy or recon. He's a genius, he's analytical, he can see 360 degrees around him. He's a natural battlefield commander. Instead, the war turned him into one more body in the mess of shinobi running around fighting Zetsu clones. And then, we get to the scene. The infamous Neji dies for romantic progression moment. Let's call it what it is: plot manipulation. His death wasn't tragic, it was convenient. He dies from a 10-tails attack that Naruto and Hinata already had been enduring. Neji blocks it, gets impaled dramatically, and falls in slow motion while delivering a speech that rewinds his character development straight back to the fatalistic mindset he had in part 1. It feels like the writing needed a sudden emotional punch but didn't want to kill off someone important, so it picked Neji, someone who used to be important but hadn't been used meaningful in years. What makes it worse is the timing. The moment Neji hits the ground, you can feel the story shifting its attention straight to Naruto and Hinata. Neji's body is literally still warm, and the camera focuses on the 2 of them holding hands. It's the storytelling equivalent of stepping over a corpse to ask someone to prom, and it completely erases everything Neji stood for. His entire arc was about rejecting destiny, but the narrative forces him to die talking about fate again, as if the author forgot his entire growth. It's not poetic, it's not a full circle, it's a reset button disguised as symbolism. Neji's death contradicts his own arc. Let's break down why his death fundamentally doesn't work. Number 1, it contradicts his ideology. Neji beat fate. That was his whole arc. And then he dies in a way that frames his death as destiny. It's the opposite of growth. Number 2, it doesn't serve his character. He doesn't die protecting Hinata. He doesn't die protecting the Hyuga clan. He doesn't die confronting the system that stole his father. He dies because Naruto and Hinata needed a romantic nudge. Number 3, it's not an earned sacrifice. This isn't Jiraiya gathering intel and passing the torch. This isn't Asuma motivating Shikamaru. This is Neji jumping into a hit that didn't even need to be fatal. Number 4, the story forgets him immediately. After the hold-handing scene, Neji is never really mentioned with any real depth again. His death doesn't reshape the Hyuga clan. It doesn't spark a clan revolution. It doesn't push Hinata's development. It doesn't create a physiological shift in Naruto. It just happens, and then the plot moves along like nothing occurred. The missed potential for Neji as a whole is ridiculous. Let's talk about what the story could have done with Neji instead of throwing him into the Ten Tails garage disposal. For one, he could have reformed the Hyuga clan. Who better to break the cycle of suffering than the person who suffered directly from it? He had the emotional weight, the intelligence, and the leadership qualities to reshape the clan's future. Instead, the clan somehow magically changed off screen by the time Boruto rolled out. Secondly, he could have been a Jonin commander. He had everything needed: top tier taijutsu, Byakugan battlefield awareness, calm decision making, analytical intelligence. He could have been the Shikamaru of the Hyuga, the clan's mastermind. Instead, he's treated like a generic soldier. Thirdly, he could have had a Byakugan evolution. The Sharingan got like 20 power-ups in Shippuden. The Byakugan got pretty much nothing. Imagine if Neji awakened the Tentegon, achieved a new rotation form, unlocked long-range chakra point attacks, developed team-based Hyuga formations. Any of these would have made him relevant again. Fourthly, he could have become Naruto's advisor as Hokage. Naruto trusted Neji. Neji respected Naruto. They bridged their past conflict. Seeing Neji as part of Naruto's inner circle would have been natural and powerful. Instead, the story didn't bother to give Naruto any Hyuga support around him, despite them being one of the strongest clans in the village. Number 5, he could have simply stayed alive and contributed. Sometimes the best thing a character can do is continue living and growing. Not every character needs a dramatic death. Neji could have become a sensei, mentoring the next Hyuga generation. He didn't need to die to be meaningful. Neji didn't just get wasted, he got erased. When you look at Neji's journey from start to finish, his ending feels like the story equivalent of a glitch. Part 1 sets him up to be a major player, Shippuden sidelines him, and the war arc finishes off in the fastest, most shallow way possible. His death didn't progress the plot. It didn't uplift the theme. It didn't complete his arc. It didn't transform another character. It didn't resolve the Hyuga conflict. It didn't echo any deep message. It was simply a narrative shortcut. A sacrifice used not to move his story, but to move someone else's romantic angle. Neji deserved more than being a stepping stone for another subplot. He deserved closure. He deserved relevance. He deserved a future. And most importantly, he deserved a death that meant something. But instead, the story treated him like a character the author forgot how to use. Neji Hyuga wasn't just wasted, he was erased from a story he helped build in the first place.